betrayal, deception, revenge. What you're about to hear is not fiction. I'm Booze, N, and every video on this channel is a confession, a scar, a buried truth. Subscribe if you're brave enough to hear the whole story. The morning silence. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., slicing through the silence like a knife. Tommy reached out from beneath the heap of blankets and slammed his hand down on the clock, missing the snooze button twice before it finally stopped screaming. His eyes blinked open to a ceiling stained by years of winter leaks, the paint curling like old parchment. For a moment, he didn't move. He listened. To the furnace struggling in the basement, to the wind brushing against the window panes, to the quiet emptiness of the house. That silence still felt foreign. It had been 6 months since she left, but the absence of her voice, the hum of her morning routine, the clatter of coffee mugs, still haunted every corner. He sat up, rubbed his face, and glanced at the photograph on the nightstand. Emily's face smiled back from a moment frozen in time. Summer of 2018, Silver Lake, Michigan. Ethan was 6, then Lily just 3. Tommy remembered the laughter, the smell of sunscreen, the feeling of her hand in his. Now that same picture looked like a cruel joke, a promise that never survived the winters. Dad. A soft voice came from the hallway. Lily, still wearing her faded pink pajamas with the unicorn print. Her hair was tangled, eyes half closed. Morning, sweetheart, Tommy said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. She climbed onto the bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. You forgot to pack my lunch yesterday. Tommy exhaled. I know, honey. I'm sorry, I was tired. Ethan said you were just mad. He hesitated. No, I wasn't mad. Not at you. Then who were you mad at? He looked away, the question stabbing him in a place words couldn't reach. Just the world, maybe. 2 Michigan mornings. By 6:15 a.m., the house smelled of burnt toast and cheap coffee. Ethan sat at the table, backpack already slung over one shoulder, scrolling through something on his phone. He didn't look up when Tommy placed a plate in front of him. Eat, Tommy said. You've got math today. I'm not hungry. You said that yesterday, too. I'm still not hungry. Tommy clenched his jaw. He wanted to yell, but something inside him, some quiet, exhausted voice, told him not to. He had learned that shouting didn't fix anything. It only widened the space between them. Lily hummed to herself, spreading jam over toast with clumsy determination. I made a heart, she said, showing her plate. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Ethan rolled his eyes. It looks like blood, Tommy warned. The boy shrugged, eyes still glued to his phone. Tommy hated that screen. It had become Ethan's new escape, his silent rebellion. Outside, the Michigan sky was the color of steel. Snow from last night clung to the driveway. Tommy could already hear the distant rumble of trucks on I-94. Come on, grab your coats, he said. Bus comes in 10. Lily obeyed without question. Ethan took his time. As they stepped out, the cold hit them like a wall. The breath from their mouths turned white. Tommy walked them to the bus stop at the corner of Maple and 3rd. An unremarkable corner in an unremarkable town. Factories loomed in the distance, their smokestacks rising like gray sentinels. Lily waved as the yellow bus appeared. Ethan didn't. He just climbed aboard without a glance. Tommy stood there until the bus disappeared around the bend. Then for a brief moment, he let his shoulders drop as though the weight of pretending could finally rest. 3. The factory. The factory was loud, hot, and smelled of metal dust. Tommy had been working there for nearly 11 years, longer than he had been married. He used to joke that the machines were more predictable than people. Lately, that joke didn't make him laugh anymore. He clocked in at 7:02. The supervisor, Rick, gave him a look. 2 minutes late, man. Tommy muttered, won't happen again. Rick nodded. You say that every week. The sound of machines filled the air, a constant mechanical heartbeat. Sparks flew from welding lines. Men shouted over the noise, trading jokes that didn't land. Tommy slipped on his gloves, pulled down his visor, and began his shift. Hours blurred. His body moved on autopilot, his mind elsewhere. On Ethan's silence, Lily's fragile optimism, the stack of unpaid bills waiting on the counter. At lunch, he sat alone. The other guys talked about football, politics, women. Tommy just stared at the vending machine reflection, wondering when his own face had started to look so tired. He thought about Emily again. The day she left. No shouting, no goodbye note, just gone. The kids had woken to find her clothes missing from the closet. He remembered Lily's cry, Ethan's blank stare, the way he had stood in the doorway feeling like the air had been ripped from his lungs. He still didn't know why. 4. After the bell, the siren blared at 4 o'clock, signaling the end of another 10-hour shift. Tommy's back ached. His hands smelled of iron and oil. He peeled off his gloves and stared at his palms. Cracked rough, the skin lined with stories no one cared to read. "Heading home, man?" Rick asked as they walked toward the locker room. "Yeah." Rick smirked. "You ever think of taking the weekend shift double pay?" Tommy hesitated. The idea of extra money was tempting. Bills didn't stop coming. But weekends were the only time he had with his kids. "Can't," he said finally. "The kids need me." Rick shrugged. "They'll survive. Kids are tougher than they look." Tommy forced a smile that didn't last. He knew Rick didn't mean harm. Still something about that phrase. "They'll survive." Dug deep. Surviving wasn't living. And that was what scared him most, that his kids were learning to survive him instead of love him. Outside, the cold bit harder. Snow had started to fall again, soft flakes floating like tired ghosts under the streetlight. Tommy's old Ford pickup coughed twice before starting. He sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes closed, letting the hum of the engine fill the silence that had followed him everywhere lately. He turned on the radio. Static. Then a country song about heartbreak and whiskey. He switched it off. 5 home again. When he got home, the house was dark except for the glow of the TV in the living room. Lily was curled up under a blanket, fast asleep, her little chest rising and falling. Ethan was awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor, controller in hand. "Hey," Tommy said, taking off his boots. "Did you do your homework?" Ethan didn't answer. "I'm talking to you." "I heard you," Ethan muttered. "And I did it." "Can I see it?" "No." Tommy felt the tension rise again. The same invisible wall that had been growing between them since Emily left. He wanted to tell Ethan he loved him, that he was trying. But all that came out was a sigh. "Fine, just don't stay up too late. I'm not a kid anymore." "You're 10, Ethan." "Yeah, and Mom said I was more mature than you." The words landed like a punch. Tommy froze, staring at his son's face. So much of Emily in his eyes, his jaw, even the way he defied him. "When did she say that?" he asked quietly. Ethan's gaze flickered. "Before she left." Tommy swallowed hard. He could feel something breaking inside. "Go to bed." "No." "Ethan." The boy turned back to the screen. "You can't tell me what to do. You couldn't even keep her here." For a split second, Tommy saw red. The anger wasn't toward Ethan. It was toward himself, toward the universe that had handed him a life that didn't make sense anymore. He clenched his fists, then forced himself to walk away. In the kitchen, he leaned against the counter, breathing hard. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. And in the other room, the sound of the video game filled the silence like a heartbeat he couldn't control. He opened a beer. It tasted like rust and regret. 6. Ghosts in the house. Later that night, when both kids were asleep, Tommy wandered through the house. Every room carried her absence like perfume that never faded. The living room still had her old blanket draped over the couch. The bathroom shelf still held her half-used lotion bottle. He'd tried to pack them up once, made it halfway through before breaking down in the middle of the floor. It wasn't that he wanted her back. Not exactly. It was that he didn't know how to live in the world she'd left behind. He walked into Lily's room. The nightlight painted everything in soft gold. She was dreaming, a faint smile on her face. Her stuffed rabbit had fallen to the floor. Tommy picked it up, brushed off the dust, and tucked it back into her arms. Then he stood in the doorway watching her breathe. "I'm trying, baby," he whispered. "I really am." But the truth was, trying didn't feel like enough anymore. 7. The storm. Michigan winters had a way of making time feel heavy. By late January, the snowbanks on the side of the road stood taller than Lily. The sky was a dull, endless gray that made even laughter sound muted. Tommy's truck broke down that week. The heater at the factory failed. And Ethan had started coming home with notes from school about disruptive behavior. He tried to talk to him, tried to bridge the gap, but every word they shared seemed to crumble before it could land. One Friday night, the storm hit. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The power flickered twice before cutting out completely. Dad, Lily called from her room. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said, lighting a candle. "Just the wind." Ethan was sitting at the table, arms crossed. "This house sucks." Tommy laughed quietly. "Yeah, tell me about it." "I mean it. Everything sucks." "Ethan? Why'd she leave?" The question cut through the dark like lightning. Tommy set the candle down. "I don't know, son." "That's bullshit. Watch your mouth." "She didn't just disappear, Dad. She left us. You must have done something." Tommy's voice cracked. "I didn't." "Yes, you did. She hated this place. She hated you working all the time. She told me." Silence. Only the wind answered. Tommy felt his throat tighten. "Go to your room." "No." Ethan, I said. Maybe she'd still be here if you weren't such a loser. Tommy's hand twitched. Instinct, anger, heartbreak. He caught himself just in time. He slammed his fist against the table instead, the candle-tipped wax spilling like tears. Get out, he said, voice trembling. Just get out of my sight. Ethan stormed off, slamming his door so hard the frame shook. Lily cried in her room, and Tommy stood there in the candlelight shaking, feeling every ounce of the failure he'd been trying to outrun. The storm outside grew louder. Inside, he sat on the floor, hands in his hair, whispering to the dark, I can't do this anymore. 8. A Father's Prayer. Hours later, when the storm quieted, Tommy went to Ethan's room. The boy was asleep, his face streaked with dried tears. The anger was gone, replaced by something softer. Something that reminded Tommy of the child he used to tuck in every night when Emily was still there. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to wake him. I don't know how to be both of them, he whispered. Mom and Dad. I'm trying to be enough, but I keep failing you. The words hung in the air, fragile as snowflakes. He brushed Ethan's hair from his forehead, then turned off the flickering flashlight on the nightstand. When he stepped outside, the snow had stopped. The world was silent again, Michigan quiet, heavy waiting. Tommy looked up at the sky. Just give me a sign, he said to no one in particular. Something to tell me I'm not screwing this up completely. A gust of wind answered. Somewhere in the distance, a plow rumbled down the road. And for the first time in months, Tommy let himself cry. Not the kind of crying that begged for pity, the kind that emptied a man, leaving just enough space for hope to crawl back in. 9. Dawn. By morning, the power was back. The world outside shimmered under a new coat of snow. The air smelled clean, almost forgiving. Tommy brewed coffee and started pancakes, Lily's favorite. She came running in wearing her mismatched socks, hair wild. You made pancakes, she said. He smiled. Yeah. Thought we could all use a better morning. Ethan appeared a few minutes later, eyes still red but softer than before. He sat without a word. Tommy flipped a pancake onto his plate. No school today. Roads are frozen. Cool, Ethan muttered. You want to help me shovel later? A pause, then a small nod. It wasn't much, but it was something. As the three of them sat together eating in the soft morning light, Tommy felt a flicker of warmth. Something fragile, but real. Maybe love didn't always look like the pictures on the wall. Maybe it looked like this, a broken family trying, failing, and still showing up. And for the first time in months, Tommy didn't feel like the house was empty. He felt like it was learning how to breathe again. Cracks beneath the surface. 1. The weight of days. Michigan mornings had a way of blurring together. The same gray skies, the same whistle of wind scraping through the pines, the same sound of Tommy's alarm dragging him out of half-sleep. Days were becoming loops. Wake, work, return, repeat. But lately, something felt different. Not in a good way. Ethan spoke even less, answering questions in single words. Lily had started drawing pictures of a happy family with 4 stick figures again, like she was trying to redraw their missing mother back into existence. Tommy kept the drawings pinned to the refrigerator, pretending they didn't stab him in the chest every time he saw them. He poured cereal, his movements slow and automatic. Lily hummed as she poured milk into her bowl, missing half of it and spilling over the counter. Ethan didn't even look up from his phone. You know, Tommy said, breaking the silence, you used to talk to me in the mornings? Ethan shrugged. I still do, sometimes. When's the last time we talked about something that wasn't school or chores? Ethan looked up, eyes tired. When Mom was here. The words landed like frost. Tommy opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Lily, sensing the tension, tried to fill the air. Daddy, can we make snow angels after school? Tommy forced a smile. If I'm home early enough. You always say that, she murmured. He froze. She hadn't said it like an accusation. It was just the truth. But somehow that hurt even more. 2. Factory smoke. The factory was colder than usual that morning. The heating unit in Sector C had failed, and the foreman told everyone to suck it up until maintenance gets around to it. Tommy tightened his jacket, grabbed his welding mask, and joined the line. The air smelled of burnt metal and grease, and the noise, always the noise, rattled the bones. A dozen men moved in rhythm machines, roaring like beasts, sparks falling like angry fireflies. Rick came over during break, coffee in hand. You look like hell, man. Thanks, Tommy muttered. Boss says they're cutting 2 positions next week. Tommy looked up sharply. You serious? Rick nodded. Plant's losing a contract. They're saying seniority might not save anyone this time. Tommy's stomach dropped. The house, the bills, the kids? Everything depended on that paycheck. Guess we'll see, he said, trying to sound calm. Rick sighed. You ever think of moving out of here, Michigan's dying man? Half the plants are shutting down. Where would I go? Anywhere that's not here. Tommy stared at the steam rising from his coffee. He thought about Michigan. Its endless winters, the rusting factories, the ghosts of the past. Leaving had crossed his mind before. but this was home. This was where Emily had once smiled in the sunlight, where Ethan took his first steps, where Lily was born during a thunderstorm. Leaving meant giving up the last pieces of who they were. He couldn't do that, not yet. 3. The call from school. It was 2:30 p.m. when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it. An unknown number from the school district. His stomach tightened. Mr. Callahan, a woman's voice asked when he answered. "This is Mrs. Porter, Ethan's guidance counselor." He wiped his hands on his uniform. "Is he okay?" "He's fine physically," she said, her tone careful. "But we had an incident today." Ethan got into a fight during recess. Tommy closed his eyes. "With who?" "Another student." "We're still gathering details, but Ethan claims the boy said something about his mother." Tommy felt something cold crawl up his spine. "Is he suspended?" "Not yet. We just wanted to make you aware. It might help if you could come in tomorrow morning." He nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "I'll be there." When the call ended, Tommy stared at his reflection in the break room window. The man looking back at him didn't seem like a father. He looked like someone barely holding it together. He left work early, the foreman frowning but not arguing. 4. The drive. The drive to the school was long, the highway lined with gray slush and dead trees. Tommy's thoughts churned like the wheels against the ice. What could Ethan have done? What was he becoming? He remembered the boy's laughter years ago. The wild joy of jumping in puddles, the way he used to run to the door every evening yelling, "Daddy's home." Now that same boy looked at him with contempt. When he arrived, the school halls smelled faintly of disinfectant and crayons. Mrs. Porter was waiting outside her office, a short woman with tired eyes and a kind voice. "Mr. Callahan," she said, shaking his hand. "Ethan's inside." Tommy stepped in. Ethan sat in a chair, head down, a small cut on his lip. Tommy's chest ached at the sight. What happened? Ethan didn't answer. Mrs. Porter did. Another student made a comment about his mother. Ethan reacted before a teacher could intervene. What kind of comment? She hesitated. Something about her running off with someone else. Tommy clenched his fists. He's just a kid. How would he? Children repeat what they hear at home, she said softly. We'll handle it, but... Ethan seems angry, Mr. Callahan. Maybe it would help if he talked to someone. Tommy's voice was quiet, almost hollow. He's not the only one who's angry. When they left, Ethan walked several paces ahead of him, shoulders hunched against the wind. Ethan, Tommy said. The boy didn't stop. Ethan, look at me. He turned, eyes red. Why'd you come? You didn't have to. You don't even know me anymore. Tommy froze. Don't say that. It's true. You just work and sleep. You don't even ask how I feel. Tommy's voice cracked. I'm trying. Yeah, well, it's not working. He turned away and climbed into the truck. Tommy stood there for a moment, the snow blowing sideways, before following him in silence. 5. Night confessions. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Tommy sat in the living room with a half-empty beer and 1,000 thoughts clawing at his chest. The TV was on, playing something he wasn't watching. He glanced toward Ethan's closed door. A thin line of light leaked from underneath. The urge to knock came and went like a tide. Finally, he did. Yeah, came the muffled reply. Can I come in? Silence. Then a reluctant, I guess. The room smelled of teenage restlessness. Socks, old pizza boxes, and the faint scent of detergent. Posters of football players lined the walls. Tommy sat on the edge of the bed. You okay? Ethan shrugged. Doesn't matter. It matters to me. The boy hesitated. He said she ran off with some guy from the city, that she didn't want to live in this crappy town. Tommy's throat tightened. People talk, Ethan. They don't know what they're saying. But what if they're right? They're not. You don't know that. Tommy took a breath. No, I don't. But I know she loved you. That part's real. Whatever happened, it wasn't your fault. Ethan's eyes flicked up, searching his father's face for truth. Then why'd she leave? Tommy looked down. I wish I knew. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't cruel either. For the first time in months, they just sat there, father and son, breathing the same air, sharing the same ache. Before leaving, Tommy said softly, We'll figure it out. Together. Ethan didn't answer, but when Tommy turned to leave, he caught the faintest whisper behind him. Good night, Dad. It was small, but it was enough. 6. Cracks beneath the surface. The next morning, Tommy woke before dawn again. The house was still the world outside, wrapped in frost. He stood by the window, watching his breath fog the glass. The factory would still be there. The bills, the long days. But something inside him had shifted. Just a little. He thought about what Mrs. Porter had said. Maybe it would help if he talked to someone. Maybe they both needed that. For now, though, he packed lunches, woke the kids, and tied Lily's scarf before the bus came. When Ethan climbed aboard, he looked back once, just a brief glance, but it was the first in weeks. Tommy watched the bus disappear down the street. Then he whispered to himself, We're still here. That's got to count for something. The snow crunched under his boots as he turned toward his truck, the morning sun breaking weakly through the gray. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like just another day. It felt like the start of something fragile, a small, hesitant hope pushing through the ice. Breaking point 1. Smoke and iron. The factory roared like a monster that never slept. It was Monday, and the air inside felt heavier than usual, thick with fumes and exhaustion. Tommy had been there since before sunrise, welding along Line B. His head throbbed from lack of sleep. His body ran on cheap coffee and guilt. Rick passed by, shouting over the machine noise. "You look like a zombie man," Tommy smirked weakly. "Guess that makes this place hell." Rick laughed, but it faded quickly when the supervisor stormed in, clipboard in hand. "Listen up. We're behind schedule. No breaks until we hit quota." A collective groan rippled through the crew. Tommy didn't argue. He couldn't afford to, not with rumors of layoffs circling like vultures. He bent over the welding table, sparks flying, the mask reflecting firelight. The rhythm of it, his spark burn cool, was hypnotic, mechanical. He could almost forget the weight of his life when he was lost in the hum of machines. Almost. Then it happened. A loose wire, a spark that shouldn't have jumped, a flash of light, searing, blinding, and the world tilted sideways. Someone screamed his name, the smell of burning gloves, the hiss of a fire extinguisher, and then darkness. 2. The hospital room. When Tommy woke, the ceiling above him wasn't cracked or stained. It was white, sterile, humming with fluorescent light. His hand was wrapped in gauze. His head buzzed with pain. Rick was sitting into the corner holding a styrofoam cup of bad coffee. "Jesus, you scared the hell out of everyone," Rick said, standing. "You passed out cold." Tommy tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "How bad?" "Minor burns, nothing permanent. You got lucky, man." "Lucky?" Tommy laughed bitterly. "Sure doesn't feel like it." Rick hesitated. "Boss says take a week off. Doctor's orders." "I can't. I need the hours." "Tommy, I need them." Rick sighed. "You keep pushing like this, you're gonna break. And then who's gonna take care of your kids?" Tommy didn't answer. His hand throbbed beneath the bandages. Somewhere in his mind, he heard Ethan's voice. "You don't even know me anymore." Rick left after a while, leaving behind silence and the faint beeping of the heart monitor. Tommy lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering when his life had stopped being about living and started being about surviving. 3. The quiet drive home. Snow was falling again when he drove home that evening. The world outside the windshield was nothing but white blur and shadow. Every turn of the wipers sounded like a heartbeat, steady but tired. When he finally pulled into the driveway, the porch light was off. The bulb had burned out days ago. He sat in the truck for a minute, staring at the dark house, feeling an ache that had nothing to do with his injury. Inside, Lily came running to him first. "Daddy, you're home." Her arms wrapped around his waist. Her warmth hit him like sunlight breaking through a storm. "Hey, sweetheart," he said softly, lifting her for a second. "Were you good today? I made you something." She ran off and came back with a drawing. 3 stick figures, Tommy, Ethan, and Lily, holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Above them, in shaky handwriting, "We are still family." Tommy swallowed hard. "That's beautiful, baby." Ethan appeared in the doorway behind her, arms crossed. "You were supposed to pick us up. Mrs. Green had to drive us. I got hurt at work." Ethan frowned. "You're always getting hurt or tired or mad. You never just..." "Stop." Tommy didn't know how to answer that. The boy was right. 4. Fault lines. Later that night, when Lily was asleep, Tommy sat in the kitchen with Ethan. The only light came from the small lamp by the counter. "Your teacher called," Tommy began. "Said you've been skipping assignments." Ethan's jaw tightened. "They don't matter." "Of course they matter." "To who? You?" "Yes, to me, to your future." Ethan pushed his chair back, the legs scraping against the linoleum. "What future? I'm stuck here. Just like you." The words hit like a hammer. Tommy rose slowly. "You don't have to be." Ethan's voice cracked. "Then why didn't you leave?" Tommy froze. There it was, the question that had been waiting for years. Why hadn't he left? Why hadn't he run when Emily did? "I stayed," he said softly, "because of you and your sister. Because someone had to." Ethan's expression softened for just a heartbeat, then hardened again. "Yeah, well, she didn't." He stormed out the door, slamming behind him. Tommy sank back into the chair, his burned hand throbbing, his heart louder than the clock ticking on the wall. 5. The breaking point. It happened 3 days later. Tommy had gone back to the factory too soon. His hand still hurt, but he couldn't afford more unpaid days. He moved slower now, careful. But the exhaustion, the mental kind, was worse than any wound. By noon, his head was pounding. The noise of machinery blended into a suffocating drone. And then through it, he thought he heard something. Emily's voice. You'll never be enough. He dropped his tools. The clang echoed. Rick turned, shouting something he couldn't hear. Tommy stumbled back, gasping for breath. The world spun. Next thing he knew, he was sitting outside the factory snow, melting on his hair, his back against the concrete wall. Rick crouched beside him. You need help, man. Tommy shook his head. I just need sleep. Rick stared at him. No, you need to talk to someone. This isn't just tired, Tommy. You're cracking. He didn't argue this time. He just nodded. 6. What Lily knew. That night, after Tommy finally collapsed on the couch, Lily came out of her room with her blanket dragging behind her. She climbed up beside him and tucked herself under his arm. Daddy, she whispered. Yeah, you cried in your sleep. He blinked. Did I? She nodded. It's okay. Mommy used to cry too. Tommy swallowed hard. You remember that? Uh-huh. But she said when people cry, it means their hearts are trying to talk. He stared at her, amazed at how children could say things that tore straight through you. What do you think my heart is trying to say? He asked quietly. Lily thought for a long moment. That it misses her, but also that it still loves us. He couldn't speak. He just held her closer, tears tracing silent paths down his face. 7. Small mercies. The next morning, something had shifted. Maybe it was Lily's words echoing in his mind. Maybe it was the fact that he woke to sunlight instead of gray. He made breakfast. Real breakfast, not cereal. Pancakes again. When Ethan came into the kitchen, still half asleep, Tommy simply said, "Eat." Ethan hesitated, then sat down. They ate in silence, at first, the clinking of forks the only sound. Then Tommy spoke. You know, when I was your age, my dad worked in a plant just like mine. He hated it. Said it was killing him slowly. But he kept showing up anyway. Why? Ethan asked. Because he didn't know any other way to love his family. Ethan looked down. I don't want to end up like that. Good, Tommy said. Then don't. For the first time they both laughed, small, awkward, but real. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something close. 8. The first step. Later that week, Tommy drove to the counseling center Mrs. Porter had recommended. He didn't tell Ethan or Lily. He wasn't sure what he would even say. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and paper. The receptionist handed him a clipboard. First time, she asked kindly. He nodded. Yeah. When he sat in the waiting room staring at the intake form, his hand trembled slightly. Describe what brings you here today, it said. He thought for a long time, then wrote, I'm a father who's trying not to drown. He set the pen down, exhaled slowly, and looked out the window. The snow was melting. Tiny drops slid down the glass, catching the light like tears that had learned how to shine. For the first time in years, Tommy didn't feel completely alone. The ghosts we keep one, talking to a stranger. The room was warmer than Tommy expected. Soft yellow light, a faint smell of peppermint tea. The therapist's office felt like a place meant to trick the body into relaxing, but his shoulders stayed stiff anyway. Across from him sat Dr. Miriam Cole, a woman in her 50s with quiet eyes that had clearly seen their share of broken people. She smiled gently. You must be Tommy, she said. Take your time, no rush. He nodded, staring at his burned hand resting on his knee. I'm not good at this. Good at what? Talking. That's all right, she said. Most people who walk in here aren't. Tommy let out a humorless laugh. Guess that makes me normal. Tell me, she said softly. What brought you here? He hesitated. He could have said the accident, the kids, the exhaustion. But those were symptoms, not causes. So he said, I don't know how to be what they need. Dr. Cole nodded, writing something on her notepad. Who's they? My kids? Ethan and Lily? Their mom left. I'm trying to keep us together, but it feels like I'm losing them one at a time. What about you? Who's keeping you together? The question landed like a stone in water, rippling through the quiet. He blinked, looked away, then whispered, no one. 2. The hidden drawer. That same afternoon, while Tommy was at his appointment, Ethan was home early from school. A half day, as he told Lily. She sat on the floor coloring while he wandered through the house restless. Something about the quiet made him uneasy. He drifted into his parents' old room, the one Tommy rarely entered anymore. Dust coated everything. The scent of Emily's old perfume still lingered, faint but real, like a memory that refused to fade. He opened the nightstand drawer. Inside were the usual things. Old receipts, batteries, a silver necklace. But beneath them, tucked away under a folded scarf, he found a letter. The envelope was yellowed, sealed with his father's name written in Emily's handwriting. For a moment, Ethan just stared at it. His pulse quickened. He knew it was wrong, but curiosity, or maybe pain, made the decision for him. He tore it open. Inside, the handwriting was messy, rushed. Tommy, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't stay anymore. I've tried to be the mother and wife I thought I should be, but I don't even know who that is anymore. The walls of this town, this house, this life, they're closing in on me. I can't breathe. Please tell the kids I love them. Tell Ethan he's brave and Lily that she's the best part of me. Tell them none of this is their fault. But I can't stay here pretending. Not after what I've done. You deserve someone who isn't broken. Me? Ethan's hands trembled. The last line blurred through tears he didn't even notice forming. Not after what I've done. What had she done? He shoved the letter back into the envelope, heart-racing guilt clawing at his throat. When Tommy came home that night, Ethan avoided his eyes. 3. The distance between. Dinner was quiet. The only sound was the scrape of forks against cheap plates. Tommy watched Ethan's face the way he kept glancing down, chewing without tasting. You okay? He asked finally. Ethan nodded too fast. Yeah, fine. Lily looked between them. Daddy, Ethan found something in Mommy's room today. Tommy froze. What did you find? Ethan's eyes widened in panic. Nothing. Just old junk. Tommy's voice hardened. Ethan, I said it was nothing. Ethan shouted, standing so quickly his chair tipped over. Why do you care now? You didn't care when she left. Enough. The word thundered across the room. Lily flinched. Ethan's face twisted, then he bolted upstairs door, slamming behind him. Tommy stood there, chest heaving, trying not to shatter in front of his daughter. Lily whispered. He didn't mean it. Tommy knelt beside her, his voice shaking. Yeah, sweetheart, but it still hurts. 4. Confession. An hour later, Tommy stood outside Ethan's door. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the furnace. He knocked softly. Ethan, can I come in? No answer. He tried again. I'm not mad, just talk to me. After a long silence, the door creaked open. Ethan stood there, eyes read the envelope in his hand. I read it, he said quietly. Mom's letter. Tommy's heart sank. Where did you find that? In your drawer. I didn't mean to. I just... He broke off, voice cracking. She said she couldn't stay after what she'd done. What does that mean? Tommy closed his eyes. The truth burned his tongue like fire. He stopped searching for words that didn't exist. She was seeing someone. Before she left, Ethan's face twisted. You knew. Yes. And you didn't tell us? I was trying to protect you. From what? The truth? Tommy took a step closer. From the kind of pain that doesn't go away. Ethan shook his head, tears spilling now. It's already here. He shoved the letter against his father's chest and walked away. 5. Therapy and truth. The next session with Dr. Cole came 2 days later. Tommy looked worse. Eyes hollow, voice rasped from too many cigarettes and sleepless nights. Dr. Cole watched him quietly before asking, You told them about their mother? Yeah, not all of it, just enough. How did they take it? He laughed bitterly, like a bomb went off. Maybe it needed to, she said. He frowned. How can you say that? Because sometimes the truth is the only thing that can grow in the ashes. Tommy leaned back, exhausted. I don't even know who I'm doing this for anymore. For them, Dr. Cole said softly. But also for you. You can't raise children on guilt, Tommy. You have to forgive yourself or they'll inherit your self-hate. Her words hit like a blade cutting clean through fog. He sat in silence, feeling something unfamiliar. A small, painful kind of clarity. 6. The visit. That weekend, Tommy drove with Lily to the lake near Traverse City, a place they hadn't visited since Emily left. The water was frozen, the trees skeletal, the sky pale as smoke. He sat on a bench, Lily beside him, both wrapped in scarves. This is where Mommy used to take us, she said softly. I know, he whispered. She loved it here. Lily looked up at him. Do you still love her? He took a long breath. Yeah. But not the way I used to. Loving someone who left is like loving a ghost. You can't touch them, but you still feel them everywhere. She nodded as if she understood more than a child should. Then she said, maybe we should say goodbye. He turned to her, to Mom. She nodded again. If we keep holding her ghost, we can't hold each other. The words stunned him. Small, perfect truth from a 7-year-old's mouth. So they stood together by the lake, eyes closed, whispering goodbye to the wind. And for the first time, Tommy felt something lift from his chest. 7. What forgiveness looks like. That night when they returned home, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table staring at the letter. He looked up when Tommy entered. I don't hate you, he said quietly. I just don't understand her. Tommy sat across from him. Neither do I, but maybe we don't have to. Maybe we just have to live with what's left. Ethan nodded slowly. I think I can do that. They sat in silence for a long time, just breathing in the same room again. Then Ethan said almost shyly, Can we go to the lake sometime? All of us, Tommy smiled faintly. Yeah, we can. 8. A letter for tomorrow. Later that night when the kids were asleep, Tommy sat at the same table where he'd yelled, cried, and broken so many times before. He took out a blank sheet of paper and began to write. To Ethan and Lily, if you ever read this one day, I want you to know something. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes and I've failed more times than I can count. But every single day I woke up trying to be the kind of father you could forgive. Your mother loved you in her own way, and I loved her once too. But love changes. Sometimes it stays. Sometimes it leaves. What matters is what we build from what's left. Don't carry my pain as your own. Carry my hope instead. Dad! He folded the letter and placed it in the same drawer where Emily's had been. Only this time, it wasn't a goodbye. It was a beginning. Spring that stays. 1. Thaw. March came like an apology. The gray-lid Michigan kept over the world cracked, and slivers of blue showed through. Snow retreated in gritty embankments along Maple and 3rd, revealing salt-burned grass and the bottle caps winter had hidden. The factories still sighed their iron breath, but the air smelled different. Wet dirt sap waking in the trees, something patient and green moving underfoot. Tommy stood on the porch with a mug of coffee and his bandaged hand finally free. The porch light replaced 2 weeks ago burned softly against the morning. Inside, cartoons mumbled on the TV. Lily's backpack lay open under a drift of crayons. Ethan's sneakers waited in a half-knot by the door like a question he hadn't decided how to tie. He watched his breath not fog for once and tried to name the feeling in his chest. It wasn't joy. Not yet. It was quieter, a low ember stay. Behind him, Lily padded out in sock feet, hair wild rabbit under her arm. "Morning, Daddy?" Her voice still had sleep in it, a little cloud that broke apart as she spoke. "Hey, sunshine." He scooped her up and let her dangle shrieking before setting her down carefully. "Pancakes." "Pancakes," she confirmed solemnly like a prayer. Ethan appeared moments later tugging a hoodie over his head. Eyes older than 10, mouth set, but not in the old hard line. When he looked at his father, he didn't look away immediately. The glance held. That was new. "Bus in 20, Tommy said, flipping the first pancake and missing the edge by a little. "I can drive you today. I'm going in late." Ethan's eyebrow rose. "Late, I switched shifts for a bit," Tommy said, too casual. "Counseling on Tuesdays, remember? I'm not missing it. And I figured mornings matter." Ethan slid into a chair, shoulders loosening an inch. "Okay," Lily tapped her fork like a conductor. "Then after school we can go look at the puddle lakes." "The what now?" Tommy asked. "The giant ones on the playground where the snow used to live," she said, scandalized he didn't know. "They have islands." Tommy laughed, something easy in it. "We'll bring boots." He plated pancakes. 3 bodies at one small table passing syrup, breathing the same warm kitchen air. Outside, ice melted in the gutters. Inside, something softer did too. They were still learning the grammar of a life not bent around absence. They were awful at it. They were getting better. 2. Rumors and paper. The factory posted notices the same week the Robins came back. Men gathered in hunched knots beside the bulletin board while the printer coughed out emails no one wanted to read. A contract had disappeared. A strategic realignment was underway. Seniority would count until it didn't. Somehow that sentence was both meaningless and terrifying. Rick found Tommy by the lockers. "You see, yeah? You okay, Rick?" asked in a tone that meant you won't be. Tommy thought of his kid's boots lined up like punctuation. On the page taped inside his skull, the sentence of his life had stopped ending in question marks. "I will be," he said, surprised by the way it came out. He stayed through lunch, then clocked out early. He didn't lie about why. "I've got a meeting at the school." "The boy Rick asked?" Both Tommy said. "And me." Rick gave him a long look, then nodded. "Atta boy." At school, tiny coats streamed down hallways like bright fish. The guidance office had a plant that kept trying to live despite fluorescent lights and winter air. Mrs. Porter waited with Ethan's teacher, Mr. Gaines, who wore tweed like a costume he'd grown into. "We asked you in today because of Ethan's essay," Mr. Gaines said when they sat. "We gave a prompt, 'Tell me about a shape that explains your family.' Most kids wrote about circles. He slid a paper forward. Ethan wrote about a triangle. Tommy read throat working. The handwriting was careful, and that way that means trying not to cry. A triangle can stand on any side and not fall down. Each side holds the other two up. But if you take away one side, the triangle doesn't stop being a triangle. It learns a new way to stand. I thought we were broken. Maybe we are different. Tommy closed his eyes. Mrs. Porter's voice had the warm firmness of a blanket. We've started a small group, kids who are dealing with changes. Ethan's welcome. Ethan looked at his father from the chair beside him, face unreadable. He didn't need to speak. His eyes did. Will you push me? Will you let me choose? Will you still be there if I say no? Tommy put the paper down. It's your call, bud. Ethan gave the smallest nod. I'll try it. Okay, Tommy said. And the word was a bridge they both stood on at the same time. On the way out, they passed the art room. Through the window, Lily's class glued tissue paper to paper plates. She saw them and waved with her whole arm, spilling sequins. He waved back, laughing, until he noticed the teacher wasn't laughing. She was pointing to the floor where Lily, oblivious, had kneeled in the wet paint like a kneeling saint in a red robe, anointing herself with kindergarten liturgy. Boots, he said to Ethan, and they both ran. Life, Tommy realized while scrubbing his daughter's calf with paper towels, wasn't a war you won. It was a mess you showed up for. 3. The call. He hadn't saved her number. He didn't need to. The old shape of it lived in his hand like a phantom limb. It rang on a Thursday night when spaghetti boiled over, and the TV refused the remote, and Lily practiced her spring recital piece on a plastic recorder with the mercilessness of a tiny god. Tommy stared at the unknown number lit against blue, and the room's sounds went soft at the edges. He stepped into the hallway. Hello, silence, then breath. Tommy. Her voice came through like a smell from a box you haven't opened in years. It reached places he'd boarded up. Emily, he said, because not saying it would be lying. She stopped. I heard about the accident. Rick messaged a friend who messaged me. Are you okay? I'm fine. He watched his reflection in the dark hall window. Thinner? Older, more there than he used to be. The kids are okay. I think about them every day, she said, and the sentence had worn places where she'd held it too much. He leaned his forehead against the cool glass. Winter leaned back from the other side. Thinking's easy, he said before he could sand it down. I know. The words were threadbare. I know I don't deserve... She broke off and began again, new angle. I'm sorry. For all of it. I'm in Detroit. I've been sober 6 months. The confession entered the room like a draft he hadn't known he'd been bracing against. There was more than you knew. There was more. The part of him that had wanted details had died. He realized maybe the night he'd watched his son nearly drown in a sentence he could not finish. I'm glad you're getting help, he said, and discovered he meant it. But I need to be clear about what happens next. Okay. She said the word like walking on ice. You don't get to tumble back into their lives because you finally started to climb your way back into yours, he said gently. If you want a relationship with them, it begins with letters. To both. To me too. No promises you can't keep. No scenes. We can talk to Dr. Cole about supervised visits later. But what they need is proof that you can show up in ink before you show up in person. Silence, then a thin exhale. Okay, she said again, and for the first time he heard not ice, but ground. That's fair. He closed his eyes. The temptation to script the conversation was strong, to chase all the old rooms in his head and rearrange furniture that wasn't his anymore. He resisted. He had children to feed and a sauce to unstick from a burner and a life in the next room that did not need this drama to be real. Send the first one when you're ready, he said. No apologies. Just your voice talking to your kids. I don't know what to say. Start with their names, he answered, and something in his chest unclenched a knot, recognizing a knife shaped like the truth. I have to go, Em. Okay. A quiet inhale. Thank you for picking a door instead of a wall. He hung up. In the living room, Lily hit a note on the recorder that sounded like a bird falling out of a tree. Ethan shouted, "Do it again," and she did, bless her, and damn her. Tommy went back to the stove, turned down the burner, and stirred. 4. The edge. Sometimes healing pressed its thumb into a bruise to make sure it was still there. Spring is cruel, not because it warms, but because it wakes. 2 weeks after the call, Ethan didn't come home on time. He sometimes lingered after his group to help Mrs. Porter put away chairs, so Tommy gave him the half-hour he'd earned. Then the next half slipped, and a long, thin thread of panic began to reel through his gut. He called. No answer. He called again. Voicemail. He told Lily calmly that they were going for a drive. They checked the school. The playground. Maple 3rd, the gas station where teenagers learned how to stand like cool hurt. No, Ethan. The sky lowered its gray head, and wind that remembered January walked down the street. Where would you go? He asked aloud at a red light. Not to the light. Not to Lily in the back, humming to soothe herself if you were lost and didn't want to be found. Lily, startled by the seriousness of his voice, stopped humming. Where the triangle could stand, she said. He blinked. What the lake, she said gently, as if teaching him his own language. Where we said goodbye. It's where the wind holds us up. He drove the way you pray. The lake was still rimmed in rotten ice, the shore an edit between seasons. On the old pier, a boy in a gray hoodie sat with his legs dangling over the water like punctuation on the world. Tommy parked badly and walked Lily beside him, one hand on her rabbit, the other fisted in his coat. He stopped a yard behind his son and let the wind do its work. Ethan, he said. Ethan didn't turn. I know I wasn't supposed to come alone. I didn't write that rule, Tommy said. Fear did. It has ugly handwriting. Silence. The lake breathed. A gull scolded the ice for being stubborn. When Mom called, Ethan said, at last, did you tell her she can come back? No, Tommy said. I told her she can write. Ethan's shoulder loosened a fraction. She texted me, he said. Just, I love you. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. He swallowed. I don't know how. You don't have to today, Tommy said. You can let the first letter be one you receive. You get to set the pace. You get to be a kid. Ethan wrapped his arms around himself. Sometimes I don't want to be brave. I don't want to be the triangle. I want to be 2 lines that fall down and get picked up. Tommy's throat burned. You don't have to earn being carried. Finally, Ethan glanced back, eyes wet, face raw and young. Then carry me. Tommy stepped forward. He didn't touch him at once. He asked with his chest and his palms open and his eyes soft. Ethan leaned in and let his father's arms become the ground. They stayed like that, while the wind tried to read them and failed. Lily pressed her small body to both of them, making a huddle, making a new geometry that had nothing to do with shapes and everything to do with weight shared. When they broke apart, they were shivering and laughing at the same time, which is a very specific cure. Okay, Ethan said, voice shaking. Okay. On the drive home, he took his phone out and typed something. He didn't show them. He didn't have to. Later that night, an email arrived at Tommy's account from Ethan's, a draft addressed to Mom with no send. I don't know what to call you right now. I think I will use your name until I know how to use your name again. I am mad, and I also miss you, and also I don't want to be mad, and I don't know how to do 3 things at once, so I am going to do one thing. Tell you that today the lake was blue under the ice. It looked like a secret, not keeping itself anymore. Tommy didn't touch the keyboard. He stood in the doorway and watched his son breathe over words that would make their own way when they were ready. 5. The small and the holy healing showed up in ridiculous places. In the grocery store aisle where Lily asked, "Are we poor?" and Tommy said, "We're careful," and she nodded like a banker blessing a loan. In the factory lot, where Rick handed him a brochure for a maintenance position at the school district, "Hours are human," Rick said. Pay, is lower. Life is higher. In Dr. Cole's office, where Tommy said out loud for the first time, "I forgive her enough to let the forgiveness stop with me." And Dr. Cole said, "Say it again," and he did. And the room changed shape by a degree. In the mailbox where a letter arrived addressed to Ethan and Lily in handwriting, he knew they knew. He didn't open it. He brought it inside and laid it on the table and sat with them while they looked at it like it was a live thing that might choose not to bite. Lily traced the E with one finger. "Can we read it together?" she asked. "We can," Tommy said, and they did. It was awkward and too short, and mercifully about the children rather than the woman who wrote it. It included a memory about Lily's thunderstorm birth and the way Ethan used to kick like a boxer when music played. It ended with "nothing brave," which is its own kind of bravery. They didn't know what to say after, so they made grilled cheese. Sometimes the answer is heat and bread, and the way butter smells in a pan. Tommy took the maintenance job. It meant getting home before dark most days, being the man with keys who could unlock small problems and make the lights behave. It meant sometimes seeing his kids in hallways and pretending not to embarrass them, which is a skill. It meant less money and less bleeding. He could live with both. On a Wednesday evening, Lily's class performed their spring recital in the gym that smelled like floor polish and childhood. 100 parents fumbled with phones. Tommy didn't record. He wanted to be there the way a tree is there. When Lily's turn came, she stepped up to the standing microphone with 2 pigtails and a blue dress that took itself very seriously. She blew 3 notes on the recorder that sounded like a door gently arguing with a hinge. Then she put the recorder down. "I want to say something," she announced to the stunned room. "My family is a triangle that learned to be a tent. We hold each other up and we go camping under our feelings." Giggles scattered like beads. Tommy put his hand over his mouth and failed to keep it together. "Thank you," Lily said, bowed, and returned to the line where she wiggled like a puppy who had delivered the mail all by herself. At home, they ate ice cream even though it wasn't a rule day. Ethan went to his room and came back with his laptop. He opened the draft to his mother and added a new sentence. "We are trying. If you want to try too, we'll know it because your trying will keep coming even when no one claps." He didn't send it. He didn't have to. Something had already left him and crossed a distance letters can't measure. 6. The long work. There were still bad nights. There were still mornings where the alarm called and the bed argued convincingly and the mirror refused flattery. There were still calls from the factory and a hollow where a paycheck used to be, and the math that never stopped doing itself on the back of Tommy's mind. There were still questions from Lily at bedtime that began with "will she" and "why didn't" and "what if," and answers that had to admit that grown-ups don't hack the code from the inside. They just make the next honest choice. There were still weeks where Ethan shut his door more often than he opened it, and the door mattered less than the knowledge that the space behind it was safe and would be waiting when he was ready to come out. There were also Sunday mornings where the house learned to hum. Pancakes. Paper boats. A trip to the lake even when the wind changed its mind and went back to February for a few hours. They built a ritual without promising to keep it forever, a triangle that sometimes pitched a fourth side, a canvas that snapped on its poles and held. They wrote letters back not every time, not on a schedule, not because forgiveness is a subscription, but because sometimes you find a word that fits, and the only decent thing is to put it in the world. Dr. Cole taught Tommy to say, "Tell me more," instead of, "Here's what I think you feel." It turned out his children were fluent in languages he hadn't learned yet. He kept showing up to class. He stopped buying beer. He started sleeping sometimes. He made friends with quiet, which turned out to be different than silence. He apologized to his son one night without adding a comma and an explanation. He learned to ask for help without declaring himself a failure first. He made a budget with a pencil and discovered satisfaction in lining up numbers that stayed where he put them. Spring thickened. Trees leafed out a green, not aggressive, but confident. The porch light, which had seemed to burn for a memory, began to burn for the evening ahead. 7. What we keep. In June, on the shore of the lake that had watched them break and watched them begin, they packed a picnic and a stack of printer paper. Ethan had drawn lines faint as veins on each sheet and folded them to make boats. Lily had named them with markers, Hope. Okay. Us. Tommy had written nothing. He had decided the lake could read his handwriting on their faces. They sat with their shoes off toes in cold water and let the day be the kind of beautiful that doesn't need witness beyond 3 people and a rabbit who had seen better eras. Rules, Lily said, full judge. 1 wish per boat. No cheating. You can't police wishes, Ethan said, older in the mouth and still 10 in the eyes. I can if they're mine, Lily retorted. Tommy laughed, then sobered without deciding to. I have one, he said. It's for you both. They looked up serious. I wish, he said, finding the words by listening to them form inside his ribs, that when you think of this year, you don't only remember what broke. I wish you remember the porch light, pancakes, Lily's tent speech, the day the lake didn't keep any of our secrets, and we didn't ask it to. I wish you remember that we learned to be kind to ourselves without anyone telling us we deserved it. That we kept going not because it got easier, but because we got softer where it mattered. Ethan considered this like a contract, then nodded. Lily climbed into his lap like the wish required it. Okay, she said. Now throw a boat. They pushed us first. It bumped against the pier stubborn, then found the seam of water's thinking and went. They stayed until the sun thought about leaving, and the mosquitoes reminded them that even hope itches. In the truck, windows down, radio low, the road home was a ribbon they didn't mind tying again. At bedtime, Lily fell asleep mid-sentence. Ethan hovered in the doorway to the hall like a thought deciding whether to speak. Dad, he said. Yeah, I'm not brave all the time, he said. It sounded like confession. Today I was scared the boats would sink right away. They did, Tommy said. They always do. Floating is failing slowly. It's the best we get. Ethan smiled, surprised into it. Okay. He hesitated. Can I send the email tomorrow? You can, Tommy said. I'll be here while you do. Or not. Either way. Okay, Ethan said again, and this time the word had more rooms than it had yesterday. Tommy turned off the hall light, left the porch one on. He stood in the middle of the living room and listened to the house settle its bones. The furnace didn't kick. It was Summer's turn to keep them. The silence was the kind that holds. Not a lack, not a wound, but a field where something grows small and stubborn and true. He sat at the table where he had once broken by accident, and then on purpose unfolded the letter he'd written months ago to his children and added a line. If I ever forget you, remind me, love is not the part that leaves. It is what stays and does dishes. He put the letter back. He washed a plate someone had abandoned in the sink, and then another, the water hot, the night easy. Before sleep, he went to the porch and looked up. Michigan had given the sky back. Stars he'd ignored for years held their posts like patient sentries. He didn't pray. He didn't need to. The day had been answered already by the fact of it happening. Inside, 2 doors closed on dreams he could not curate and did not need to. The triangle held. The tent stayed up. The wind fussed with the porch flag and got bored. The porch light burned because he had turned it on, and not because he was afraid of the dark. Tomorrow would come with its own errands. Letters and lunches and a maintenance ticket about a door that wouldn't latch, and one about a squeak in the gym floor, and one about a teacher who needed a step stool and found a metaphor instead. He was a man with keys. He was a father learning his children's languages. He was tired and he was enough, and he would be both again. Spring for once did not promise. It stayed. And he did too. I'm Booze, N, and these are real stories, told by those who lived them. Subscribe if you're ready for the next truth. If this story made you think twice, hit that subscribe button. The next one might just break you. Thanks for staying till the end. Every week I uncover another story the world tried to forget.